Welcome to C&S-Sportscast, everyone. I am Sam Deering. That is Christian John, and we're excited to have you with us for an NBA draft special. There's lots to talk about, especially after Anthony Davis was traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for 3 first-round picks: Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, and Lonzo Ball. So let's talk about this AD trade briefly before we get into free agency in our later shows. Um, I guess we'll start with the Pelicans. Christian, what do you think this means for the Pelicans?
I think it means that they're going to give Zion Williamson a good chance to succeed now and in the future. Yes, I did say now. I do believe that this team, with the help of a couple spare parts in free agency, I do believe that a team with a starting lineup of that consists of Lonzo Ball, Drew Holiday, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and possibly whoever they pick at 4 or maybe later, but we'll get into that later. I do think that team could compete for an 8 seed in the West, especially because I believe the West is going to be less competitive this upcoming season. What do you think of this trade in return for the Pelicans?
I think it means a lot. Before I'm thinking this is definitely a win-win trade because Anthony Davis is one of the best players in the league. But the Lakers literally, like, honestly, I would have tried to keep Josh Hart out of that deal, but all they kept out of it, one of their main guys was Kyle Kuzma. They still need a point guard, which we'll get into the Lakers very in depth in our future shows. But for the Pelicans, I guess the question is, do they trade Drew Holiday? I don't necessarily think they need to. Um, I do think, yeah, I really do think they're going to compete for an 8 seed. I think they're going to be playoff contending next year. Not easily, but I really think they're going to make the playoffs. And Lonzo Ball, and I have said this that he's going to be a bust, but I'm very anxious to see what he has learned, and not just him. Guys like him and Brandon Ingram, who has also been on the trade block for quite some time. I'm anxious to see what Lonzo Ball though has learned from has what he has learned from playing behind one of the best players in LeBron James. People will make the issue. What did he shoot? Like 50 or no, I think he shot like 30% from the like outside the paint, right? And he was a 10 point per game player, which is well below average. And
Yeah, but scoring's not his game. That's not
right,
Lonzo's not a scorer.
right. And I think it'll be very interesting to see that young squad. And I think Drew Holiday is a perfect guy to just learn off of and even build off of with that team. And I think the Pelicans, the more I think about it, I really do think that trade helped them immensely for their future. As for the Lakers, I guess I'll start with this one. For the Lakers, if you're in win now mode, yeah, I think the Lakers won if you're in win now. But if you're looking ahead for the future, um, I the Pelicans definitely won that trade. You lost a lot of players, and now it's looking like Kyrie. Will the Lakers sign Kyrie, or will they go after Kemba Walker? What do you think? What do you think this means to the Lakers?
They should be excited that they got Anthony Davis, and that's all they should be at this moment. In basketball, you should get assets, and then you build the best team you can. You worry about the future. In the future, Rob Pelinka could not have a job as the Lakers GM by 2024 when the last or second to last draft pick gets conveyed to the Pelicans. So I believe that this move was the best thing for the Lakers in the short run because the long run is not guaranteed.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to be looking ahead into free agency. About a week, definitely after the draft. I think these next few weeks are going to be very interesting in regards to the world of NBA. So that moves us into the trade, or not the trade. Sorry, the NBA draft. It's draft week. The draft is Thursday night, and New Orleans has a lot. I guess less pressure, but they do have the first and that three first round pick trade includes this year's fourth pick for from LA, from the Lakers. But they've already been receiving interest. So the first one that comes to mind is the offer for the fourth pick from the Hawks for the eighth and the 10th pick. Or there's Bradley Beal. But let's get to the first one. So I personally think, I don't think there's any like franchise players outside of the top five. I really do think they could grab like guys like Nasir Little, um, or even like Jackson Hayes or Brandon Clark. I do think there's guys with plenty of potential that can end up in New Orleans if they snag that pick. Because now what they're saying is number 4 is going to be Zion and RJ Barrett. Yeah, those guys were unbelievable at Duke, teaming up together. But it's the NBA, and I really don't think RJ Barrett is going to be a franchise player. What do you think about this offer from the Hawks?
I think it's definitely something to consider, but it really is going to make David Griffin put all his chips to the center of the table right away. If you trade for somebody like Bradley Beal, you're showing that you would want to win now and in the future. Obviously, that's what everybody wants to do, but this is really more of a win now move if you traded for Beal. If you trade for 8 and 10, you're saying this year, this next year, and probably the year after that aren't our year, because you probably end up like with what you said, a Jackson Hayes and a Nickeil Alexander-Walker, for example. Maybe DeAndre Hunter falls. Maybe you take Cam Reddish. But if you keep 4, I believe you're saying that you could win in the next couple of years and really contend. However, if you trade for 8 and 10, you're kind of punting on the next 2 seasons in my eyes. And if you trade for Beal, you're trying to win right away.
Yeah, I definitely think there's two ways to look at that. I do agree with what you're saying. Um, like I said, and you put DeAndre Hunter in this. I don't necessarily think. I don't see him falling out of the top 5. I would be very surprised if he does. This draft is, I don't want to say weak, but it's definitely not as strong as we've had in previous years. So I guess that moves us into the New York Knicks. There's been lots of talk about free agency. They have 2 max deals to go after, but they also have the 3rd pick in the draft, and they've been receiving some offers. And from what we've all been hearing, they've been considering Darius Garland at number 3. Um, what do you think about that? I definitely think it's something to consider, and Garland is definitely a top 5 potential. I really think I think you could argue for him in the top 3, right behind Ja Morant and Zion. How about you?
I love Garland as a scorer. I think he could be Damian Lillard. However, I think passing on RJ Barrett at 3 is very risky. He seems like more of a sure thing to me. Garland played 5 games in college before he tore his meniscus at Vanderbilt. So he's more risky in my eyes. However, they might be looking for the splashier guy, who is probably Garland, because he could be Damian Lillard. If this happens, New Orleans is going to be sitting there, and David Griffin's going to look like an absolute mad scientist for getting Zion and RJ and not having to move up to get RJ Barrett.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And Darius Garland has been getting some interest from quite a bit of teams, including the Boston Celtics, the Bulls, and even the Timberwolves. Um, from from the 4th pick, or they're interested. Let me rephrase that. They're interested in the 4th pick to grab Darius Garland, and there's no for sure thing that he could be available. And going back to Nola, if I'm Nola, if I have RJ Barrett or Jarrett Culver available, I'm taking Jarrett Culver. I think Jarrett Culver has the potential to be a franchise player, and I think he can make more. I think he will make more of an impact um, in New Orleans than RJ Barrett will. I'm not saying RJ Barrett's going to be a bust. I just don't think he's going to be like amazing or as good as people think he's going to be. But back to Darius Garland, there's quite a bit of teams that are interested in the fourth pick for Garland. I guess of the Bulls, the Celtics, and the Timberwolves, the one of the three teams, those three, I really think Boston stands out to me because Al Horford just opted out of his deal today. Kyrie Irving is 100% gone. He's been like there. If you read the news, he's ghosting the Celtics. He's not talking to them anymore. They know he wants out. Um, so Al Horford and Kyrie Irving they're out of the picture. Now the question that comes to mind is Boston rebuilding? And if they are, I definitely think trading up for number 4 to pick Darius Garland is definitely something to consider. What do you think?
I like Garland's fit with Boston, no doubt, because he's a lights out shooter, and that's a great fit alongside Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who they can make jumpers, but you don't want to see those guys taking 10 threes a game, either one of them. However, I feel the best fit for him here would be Chicago, and Chicago probably needs him the most out of these three teams. They haven't really had a good point guard since Derrick Rose got hurt. At least that's what I believe. And pairing him with Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter Jr. and Zach LaVine would be phenomenal. And now you have 4 guys with extremely high ceilings to eventually take on the elites in the East and compete. And they could probably compete as soon as 2020 with that roster.
Yeah, I do think the Bulls, their front office, we'll get to who needs to nail the draft, but I do think the Bulls come to mind too as one of the teams I think needs to do well in this draft. Yeah, you have Lauri Markkanen, you have LaVine, and you have Wendell Carter Jr., who still has loads of potential. Um, but yeah, I really do. Darius Garland, I think, would be a solid fit. But why don't we move ahead to who needs to nail this draft since we're both talking about that right away. So and just so I don't like repeat myself, I do think Boston is the number one team that comes to mind for me that really needs to nail this draft. Um, Basically, all the reasons that I said before. They have Kyrie Irving gone and Al Horford's gone, and I honestly think Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum could be trade targets. Not saying this offseason, but I think they eventually could be. If not this year, maybe at the deadline. I don't think those guys will be on the team, or one of those guys will be gone in the next year. And I think you could get quite a bit of value. I know the Celtics were one of the front runners for Anthony Davis, and they refused to trade Jason Tatum because they believe Jason Tatum is their franchise player, which I guess you can make an argument for because he had an unbelievable rookie year. But he had bits of his second year. He had a bit of a sophomore slump during the course of the season. But they have 3 first-round picks, and I think they need to use those very wisely. I do think they could grab guys like Romeo Langford or even Tyler Hero. Even though I don't think either of those guys will be franchise players, I do think if you go to Boston, not necessarily that you're set up for success, but you have other guys to learn off of on guys like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. What do you think? Who needs to nail this draft that comes to mind? for you, because Boston's definitely number one for me, and I think they're set up for the draft the way they are, the picks that they have. I think they're set up to do very well. It's just a matter of who they pick and if they trade one of their picks, and for even grabbing Darius Garland at 4.
For me, it's Atlanta. They could make this a turbo rebuild with Trae Young and say they get up to 4 to take whoever they want to take. I'm not sure. I almost doubt it would be Darius Garland because
I feel like it would be R.J. Barrett, right?
he's a lot like Trae Young in my eyes. And that's begging the question though if RJ Barrett is there at 4.
That's
But
true.
whatever.
But
That's Atlanta has 3 picks now in the first round with the Torian Prince Allen Crabbe deal. So I don't assume they're going to have 3 rookies in camp, or at least 3 first round rookies in camp. So I do believe we will see them move up and grab somebody to pair with Trae Young, John Collins, Kevin Huerter. And if they can grab 4 and they get their quote unquote guy and it works out, this could be a crazy fast rebuild. And this night they could look back at this on Thursday and go, that was really the moment where we stepped on the gas pedal and became contenders. Or they could look back at Thursday night, and if things don't go well, they could go, this is the night where we lost everything. So I feel as though this is very important Thursday night for them. You have to, if you have 3 first round picks in the NBA draft, you have to get something to stick out of it. And that's the spot Atlanta finds themselves in.
yeah, I think there's quite a few teams that are definitely a hit or miss for this draft. They need to do well. And I next week we'll get into this, but free agency, the Knicks really need to step it up. But
Yes, they do.
yeah, that'll be another thing.
We'll get into that though next
Absolutely,
week.
yeah. So let's talk about Duke. Yeah, at Duke, Cam Reddish was the I guess worst player of that. Yeah,
Third
I would.
wheel. He was the third
Right,
wheel.
right,
That's the best way
and
to call him.
Stephen A was right. He had a bit of a disappointing end of the road towards his turn, like for the tournament. He was saying, and I kind of somewhat want to agree with him based on the way he played, that he should stay another year. But his stock, I definitely think he could fall anywhere in this draft. Um, I don't see him falling past 15. I would be very surprised if he falls out of the lottery. But I, I definitely think Cam Reddish is raw, and I think he could develop into something special. Not going there and saying he's going to be a franchise guy, but I think he has loads of potential, and I think he has the potential to be something very special. And I think he could develop into a gift to wherever team he lands. What do you think about Cam Reddish?
He is an absolute enigma in this draft. He could be Paul George or he could be Anthony Bennett. We don't know which Cam Reddish is going to show up. If it's the confident Cam Reddish that
Right.
comes in, can nail threes, is extremely athletic. He's just a walking bucket when he wants to be. Or do we get the guy who at times at Duke looked sheltered, couldn't make a jumper?
Exactly. And I look at Cam Reddish the same way I look at Trae Young in last year's draft. Trae Young to me was a hit or miss guy in that draft, and he turned out to be great. And
Well, it was one season.
right,
I
and
agree. I think he's going to
he,
be really good, but
I think he's going to be good, but I still think it was tough to judge even before the draft started that he's going to be hit or miss, or whether he was going to be good or not, because there were times at Oklahoma where he would go lights out, and then there were other games, even where they were playing unranked teams, where he just didn't show up. Like, where was the Trae Young we saw, like where was the Trae Young we saw during the upset in the during the year or during the season?
Right.
And I guess Cam Reddish, third wheel is a good way to put it. I don't I don't necessarily want to say that he didn't have the spotlight because they gave it all to Zion.
Well,
um,
that is the truth. That's what happened.
yeah, yeah. Um, but you're at Duke for a reason, and you're at Duke because you were recruited as one of the best players in your draft class in your recruiting class. So yeah, I definitely agree. I think he could develop into an all-star player, or he could develop into a mediocre guy that sits in the G League. Um, and I think it'll be interesting. And I don't want to say whoever picks him is a win-win or like a win or a loss. Like he's definitely a hit or miss player, and I don't want to say he's a bust. I think he could develop into something very special.
Well, I agree. I mean, not to sound too harsh, but realistically, Cam Reddish could be the reason why guys in front offices get fired, either because he falls to like 10 and front offices in front of him take a guy like Doumbia out of France and he doesn't end up working out and Cam Reddish is Paul George. But also, if a team like the Cavs can't pass on his potential and take him at 5 and he ends up not being very good, he could cost some guys some jobs, which is kind of scary. And I'm really rooting for Cam Reddish that that doesn't happen to him.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the reason why he's been fluctuating so much throughout this first round. It'll be very interesting come Thursday. So we have one more thing before we wrap things up. I guess this could fall into free agency, but potentially if they do this before the draft or even during, the Bucks are looking to dump salary on Tony Snell and Ursan. So Tony Snell's on what he recently just signed a 4 year, I believe it was 46 mil, and then Ursan's on a 2 year 16 mil. So I guess of those players, I would rather get rid of Tony Snell, seeing as I think Ursan's been tossed around quite a bit, and obviously there's a reason for that. Um, but for Milwaukee, I do think that Ursan has played better when we needed him. And it's not necessarily that Tony Snell, um, he just wasn't good. It's that one, I would not want his contract, and I've said this for a while. I don't. I do think he's a bit overpaid, and I don't think he's worth that much. I would have re-signed him, but I would have not have re-signed him for that much. Um, and the Bucks, the Milwaukee just has so much depth at that position, and he barely played in the playoffs. I know he didn't play in the he he barely played in the Eastern Conference. I don't even know if he played. I don't even
He
think he
played in
played.
game two's blowout.
Yeah, games too. Yeah. Um, but if I'm Milwaukee, let's put it this way: if one of those picks, if they get rid of Ursan or Tony Snell, pick 30's gone. And I don't think Milwaukee is losing much out of it because I think past about 15 to 20, I would say the rest of these guys in this draft, um, I think they're even more hit or miss guys than Cam Reddish.
Well,
And
that's
I'm
what you get late in the draft.
right, right, and basically anything past the lottery or even I guess 20 if you want to give it to them. Yeah, they're either bust or you don't know how they're going to be.
I wouldn't
And they
classify him
all
as
the
bust.
guy they're the guys that sit in the G League and they take a while to develop.
Yeah.
But if I'm Milwaukee, I'm definitely dumping Tony Snell's contract. What do you make of all that? And do you think they should do both or one, or what do you think? Or keep 30?
I believe they need to find somebody for at least one of those salaries just to keep the gang together.
Mm-hmm.
And if it costs you 30, it costs you 30. I don't think that it's really a big deal per se, but it's kind of what good teams have to do when they want to keep their cores together. So Milwaukee's just kind of going through that now for the first time. For Milwaukee fans, this is new. We've always been the team that's had salary brought on salary for picks, so I don't think we should be afraid of trading 30 to move either Snell or Ilyasova or possibly both. If you could find a team crazy enough to take on both guys, but I definitely think it's a must for them. There's
Absolutely.
there's no way you can keep both guys.
Right. And I don't think losing the 30th pick is going to be much of. I don't think it's going to hurt them at all. There's some guys, there's some talented guys down there like Carson Edwards,
Ty
or even
Jerome,
Ty Jerome, right? And
Grant Williams.
yep, and there's guys are saying that Ty Jerome could be somewhat of a Nikola Mirotic, which would be interesting. So I think Ty Jerome could fit really well, but if you lose pick 30, it's the Bucks. They're they've Vegas has them at the odds to win the title next year. They're number one in the power rankings. They're in win now mode, and I don't think any of these guys are going to make an impact, a huge impact, or necessarily whoever they could take at 30, unless it's Ty Jerome, because I would love it if Milwaukee took Ty Jerome because I think he would be a very interesting fit in Milwaukee. So to wrap things up, whose night, whether it be a player or team or both, are you most anxious for?
You go first. I went first
All
all
right.
day.
So I'm going to say New Orleans. I will make an argument and say John Moran is the best player in the draft. Zion is obviously a franchise player, but obviously, if you're New Orleans, you're gonna pick Zion because he's the better fit, and I'm very interested to see what they do with that fourth pick, whether it be for Bradley Beal, which I do think it's a win-win for both. Um, I think they have a lot less pressure now, but I'm very interested to see what they do with four. They're saying that Zion could team up with RJ Barrett at four. I do think if I have Jarrett Culver or RJ Barrett available at four, because Darius Garland, let's say Darius Garland's gone, I would pick Jarrett Culver. I think Jarrett Culver is going to make more of an impact than RJ Barrett. But the New Orleans Pelicans are definitely the team I'm most anxious for, and not necessarily they need to nail this draft, because I definitely think they nailed free agency so far already. But I'm very interested to see what they do with that fourth pick. I think it'll be very interesting what they do with Beal or the draft or eight or 10. What do you think?
I'm gonna go with a guy we didn't talk about a lot this year, and that's this episode, and that's Romeo Langford. I'm interested to see how much he falls or doesn't fall. From what I saw of Romeo Langford at Indiana, he looked very good to me. He was one of the top recruits. He was believed to be probably a top 10 pick coming in to the season, and then he didn't have a great season. So now he's stuck in that after the lottery, will we ever hear from this guy range again or now? So it should be interesting to see where he goes and follow his career as we see if Romeo Langford can realize the potential it was believed he had, or if he is that guy we saw last year at Indiana.
Great. I actually want to add a player. I don't know if you want to add a team, but I want to add Tyler Hero. Um, I have seen him fluctuate many places. When I first read that he was going through the draft process to enter, I thought, why? I don't think he's going to be a lottery pick. Well, what do you know? Every mock draft you look at, he's in the lottery. So I do think he could fall anywhere too. And I I've been told that he's going to be a Devin Booker. Um, I don't want to say that's a stupid comparison, but I just don't see Tyler Hero. I'm rooting. It's nothing for the like. I respect his talent. I'm rooting for Tyler Hero. Um, it'll be an interesting night. He will be first round. It's just a matter of will he fall into the lottery. But yeah, I'm rooting for Tyler Hero. I think it'll be a very interesting night for him as well as the other guys. So that will wrap it up, and we will see you next week. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter page is CS-Sports Feed 2. Our Instagram page is CS-Sports. And our Facebook page is C&S-Sports Podcast. And don't forget, I am Sam Deering. Why don't you follow me on Twitter at Sam_Deering68, and Christian is I love Brent Suter. Give us a share, a like, a follow, and share with your friends. So we will see you next week.